The Sixth Axis podcast.
Hello and welcome to the last episode in our Year According To series for 2015. As per usual, I'm your host, Kris Lipscomb, but not really, because in a strange twist and a nice book ending, I am joined today by Tef. Say hello, Tef.
Hello.
And he is going to be interviewing me.
I am indeed.
He was the first person, the first TSA person who was on this, and so it seems only reasonable that we flip things back around at the end and I get to talk about my year. I didn't get to talk about it last year, so this year I'm going to do it. It's going to be nice.
Who wants to hear about... No, sorry, that's mean.
No one wants to hear about my
No
year.
one wants to hear about you, Kris. No, I don't know. I think a nice place would actually be starting with the end of your year. Because we can talk about this series of podcasts as well.
Yeah, so this has been a lot of work.
It has. And I mean, I've seen a lot of this coming together. I've helped put it together, getting interviews and stuff like that. So why did you decide to do this nonsense, Kris?
Well, firstly, I want to say, you say you helped. This literally would have been impossible if you had not assisted me. We wouldn't have got the people we got because I'm not good at talking. I'm good at talking to people once I've got them on the podcast. I'm not good at being like, oh, hi, would you like to come and do this thing? I'm terrible at that bit, but you're good at PR and talking to PR people and all that jazz.
A couple of them had to go through round the houses.
Yeah.
A little bit to get them to come together. Getting Rushy from Drive Club, that was awesome. That
was a very big get, and was surprisingly one of the easier ones compared to Don't Nods were incredibly difficult to get, and only got confirmed 2 days beforehand. Don't
Nod were slightly difficult. Well, we only thought of that one quite late in the process as well, and then this is also the time of year where certain PR will go on, they'll have a break, a holiday after their games have been released and stuff like that. So getting to Don't Nod actually had to go through the Focus side of things as opposed to the Square Enix side of things. But
they were really good, actually, once we had them on.
Yeah, and I mean, they were very enthusiastic once we actually got the message to them saying, hello, would you like to be on this podcast?
Yeah, it's not a slight to them at all. It was just, they were just incredibly awkward to get hold of. But beyond that, they were lovely and really enthusiastic and really interesting to talk to. And so I think
my favourite moment from all of this was when you were interviewing them, and halfway through I just got a little message from you saying, these guys are really interesting, but it could be their accents. Yeah. They're very strong French. I mean, they are French, but they've got very strong French accents. But they were really interesting to talk to. Their views on episodic content that was obviously gone out, and hopefully you've listened to it, because we're probably going to reference a bunch of stuff we did record. But hopefully you've listened to them. You should have listened to them. I don't know why you've chosen this one and not any of the other vastly more interesting episodes we've put out. Well, as we've already said, who wants to listen to your year?
Yeah, exactly. My year is not we talked to Rushy about Drive Club, and he openly talked to us about the rehabilitation of Drive Club. Go and listen to that. That was genuinely really interesting. Or go and listen to Dan Marshall, who made The Swindle, talk about death in video games and why he thinks it's weird, which he has some pretty solid views on. It makes a good point. It is kind of weird that you play as Nathan Drake and then you die, and then it's just it's all right, he's back here now. That's kind of weird. If you genuinely think about that decontextualized from a video game, you don't get that in a movie. That would be a weird movie, right?
You get that a lot in video games, and there's even stuff you can shoot your companions on your adventure. You can shoot them in the back a few times, they just shrug it off. Yeah. As soon as they get to a cutscene, they take a bullet, they're down.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's this strange divide between the two, but video games, you're not meant to think about them too much.
So why we did this was, there was a reason we did this last year, and I can't remember what it was for the life of me. I think I was talking to Peter Chapman, because he must have still been doing stuff at the time. Mm-hmm. Or maybe something tangentially involved, or because I just still talk to him and just pitch him ideas and stuff. Because he still talks to all of us, and he's a good sounding board. I think he's good for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he has given me critical feedback on stuff I've published, after it's been published. But he's given me critical feedback because he's very good at that kind of thing. But yeah, so I for some reason last year I was like, well, let's just talk to everyone at TSA and do all that, and I think it was 6 podcasts, and that was a lot of work, but it was because I was doing more other stuff as well. So I was doing more of my wrestling podcast, By God, which I haven't been doing much of this year, but we did a huge like year-end awards show that ended up getting published in like 3 parts because the recording session was so long. The recording session was like 3.5 hours long. And so the only way I could publish it was in 3 parts. And that was just like horrible because it was getting all the stuff once we decided on what the awards were, and then like writing up an accompanying post with firstly all the categories that were in this, and then being like, okay, spoilers after this are who actually won the awards, and then all of that as well. So kind of having to write everything else out twice. And all of, that was just terrible. But I was doing that at the same time as all these podcasts, and so I was quite stressed, but it was manageable. And this year I didn't do any wrestling stuff, but we were like, I could do 12. 12 seems feasible when we're thinking about it in like October. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, we've got 4 recordings scheduled in one day. And that will be a quarter of it done in one lump, which seemed good. And then one of those fell through, but we got it sorted another day.
We're not going to name names.
We're not going to name names, but it was a person who basically emailed us back the next day and was like, okay, cool, when we're doing this, oh shit, I've missed it. Which was brilliant. It was really funny. And they were very nice, and we got it all set up, and it was not a problem. So I just don't know why I think we just went 12 is like 12 fit into the month just about.
12 days of Christmas, 12 that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even though it's not being done as the 12 days of Christmas.
That would have actually killed me. If we'd done it over 12 days, it would have killed me.
Well, I mean, like because we had a lot of these recorded by the end of November.
You did,
so
yeah.
like
we did, and we had them
been
edited. Like basically, we recorded them out of order, and then they've been edited in publishing order because that makes sense. It's pointless editing something that you're not publishing for a month while you've got stuff that's being published in 2 days that you haven't edited yet.
Yeah.
So I did all that.
But I mean, have you enjoyed it?
I have enjoyed it actually. And there's stuff in this where, like, these are probably the best quality podcasts I've done because everything has had like at least 2 edits for a start. The normal podcast gets 1 edit because it is not practical for me every week to edit it twice because I just don't have enough time, and I only barely had enough time to achieve this. But yeah, so everything got 2 edits, so it's really tight, and it really surprised me how much I miss on a first edit because I got someone I was editing the other day, and I did it, and I came back for the second pass, and like 12 minutes in, I'd already cut another minute out of just tightening it up. So it does, stuff does need that second pass. I think particularly more in this format where it's just 2 people talking because there's more people on the normal podcasts. And that's actually something I found with the Don't Nod one where we had Oscar and Michelle both on the same podcast. Like it needed less editing because there's more people involved in the conversation, which makes it much less stop-starty. And that was a good one. But I have enjoyed doing this. Like we were talking about earlier, these are interesting people to talk to. Like everyone at TSA is nice to talk to because it's basically me mucking about with someone for like 45 minutes an hour. It's just like fucking about and talking to them about stuff they've done this year. But if you haven't listened to Aaron's, you should go listen to that because that's a really thoughtful one, and he talks about his dad dying and about his granddad dying this year.
He's had a rough.
He's had a rough year.
In regards to that, he's had a tough year. Yeah,
and I wasn't expecting to get anything like that out of anyone, but that was genuinely a nice bit, and I made sure with him before the podcast, I was like, do you want to talk about this? And he was perfectly willing to.
Yeah, I think that's been, like, all the way through, we were very conscious that, like, these aren't Newsnight style, like, haranguing of the interviewee and, like, trying to get them to answer one particular question.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just, it's silly to call it a puff piece, because, like, with Drive Club, it was, like, you know, fairly open and honest about what that game and what the studio has gone through.
Yeah, the Drive Club was quite critical. We were quite critical with Don't Nod as well, because we talked about some of the technical issues that game has had, which are genuine technical issues. But they did something which developers don't often do, was they put it out, it's a trade-off. Like, we can invest all this time on making sure the lip sync's perfect, or we can invest this time in other stuff, and we'd rather invest this time in other stuff because it's more important.
Yeah.
Like, we'd rather invest this time in making the game enjoyable and fun to play. Although I don't know if I'd necessarily call Life is Strange fun to play. I like playing it.
I think it's engrossing.
Yeah, engrossing is probably the right word for it. Yeah, important point actually. Like, not enough games are genuinely engrossing without just being like super fun and stuff. It's nice to have a game like that isn't high paced, come on, keeping hold of you all the time. It's slightly different. But yeah, these aren't puff pieces at all. Like, I've been critical to people where I felt I needed to be critical. Perhaps some people I could have been more critical of, but overall, I think these have been fairly balanced, you know?
I mean, yeah, but the point I was trying to get to was that we've always made sure that what we're talking about, the people are comfortable with the topics. And so there's been back and forth. It's like, here are the list of topics. If there's anything on there that you think's stupid to talk about, that you don't want to talk about, as you said with Aaron, there's different degrees of personal life going in there. And so it's just a discussion, but both sides of it have to be happy with what's going on.
Absolutely. And there were some people who openly said to us that we don't want to talk about the personal side of stuff, and that's fine if they don't want to. Whereas Rushy didn't say to us he didn't want to talk about it, and so I asked him, and we got all the awesome stuff about his kid. That's one of my favourite moments of the whole series.
That is, definitely. I like seeing him talk about it like later on. He's tweeted once or twice he tweeted like a little video of really, really crazy physics from Farming Simulator where he's got the tractor and he sort of like drives up to like some ploughing tool or something like that and he presses the attach button and the tractor just starts flying off into the sky. And he tweets that, and then it's just like, and if you don't understand that, listen to this podcast. And it's just like brilliant.
Yeah, because he's done the stuff he talked about was brilliant. And like, we joked because like a couple of days after we published that, it must have been less than a week after we published it, they came out and were like, "Oh, Farming Simulator now supports the steering wheel, supports like the Thrustmaster steering wheel or something." We were laughing in Slack, being like, "Oh, well, Rushy's going to be really happy. This kid's got a new toy." But yeah, so those personal moments, they were very much what people wanted to share, but they were really interesting and really good moments. But yeah, if people didn't want to talk about a topic, we were perfectly happy to avoid it because these are intended to be more reflective kind of interviews. So that's why there's quite a lot of talking with people, even people from TSA talking about process and that kind of thing, like rather than just, "Oh, you made this game and what's this mean and what's this mean?" It's more like, here is a genuine, like, okay, so when you're making Life is Strange, like, how are you planning it out? What are the inspirations behind the death system in The Swindle? Stuff like that is a much more interesting topic for me to talk about. And I think in this kind of interview where it's not super pressed for time as you are normally in an interview context because there's 20 other journalists waiting in a line behind you to come and talk to the person.
Yeah.
And I can tell by your laugh, you know exactly what I mean. But
there's 20 other people just sat around just twiddling their thumbs.
Yeah. Like, yeah. Just being like, fuck's sake, come on, I want to get in there. And you're pressed for time, and there is normally, not always, but there is normally someone from PR sitting like 6 foot away from you, staring at you for the whole interview, which is their job, quite reasonably. But yeah, it doesn't necessarily lead to the most open interviews always. I think the time constraint is the main one. And with these, where we've blocked out, like, we actually blocked out 2 hours for every interview, but it was really an hour of recording time. Like, and I think only one of them goes significantly over an hour.
That was Jimmy, wasn't it?
Yeah, Jimmy's is very long. Jimmy's is like 90 minutes ish. I think the raw audio, like before I cut it, is probably like an hour and 40, hour and 45, something like that. It was very long, and I had it sitting on my hard drive for about a week before I edited it, and just kind of silently dreading it.
Well, I think the nice thing is that he's sort of reverting to type. It's sort of like the classic stereotype of a guy that runs a bar.
Yeah, just chatting,
or a pub.
Chatting away for ages.
He can talk to anyone for anything for any length of time.
Yeah, and I like his interview was really interesting because I didn't expect him to go in some of the directions he did, but where he was talking about the kind of always online stuff that Xbox were originally promoting for the Xbox One before it got changed, etc.
and talk about how that would have benefited him. That was quite an interesting talk, and also about some of the, I guess, foibles of external PR. Because a lot of companies don't use in-house PR, and they don't necessarily use specialist PR. Most of the specialist PR we deal with is actually very good, whether it's in-house or out-of-house. It's very, very good. But there are a couple of companies who use non-specialist PR, and it's just always a bit weird because they don't necessarily know a huge amount about games, or for marketing and those kind of things, which he deals more with the marketing side of stuff. And talking about companies, like talking to people when he's arranging events who don't want to advertise previous games in the series because that's not what they've been paid to promote.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And like that's kind of an interesting point of what happens if you do stuff externally. Was if you have somewhere like Activision or whatever, and they're doing, because they do it all internally, they have an Activision team because they are a big enough publisher. But doing it all internally, they're like that. It makes sense for them to be like, oh yeah, you can reference old Call of Duty games. That's fine, because for them it's about the brand more than anything else. They're not promoting. They're promoting a specific game, but it's no skin off their nose if you want to promote their whole brand and look at the previous games. Whereas for an external company, there's not much for them to gain, is there? So,
yeah, I guess that's the case.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's enough talking about this podcast series.
That's very navel gazing.
Sort of, yeah. It's gone very meta all of a sudden. But if you haven't listened to any of these before, we do like to also feature a few games that the interviewee wants to talk about, just from this year, so like some of the highlights that they've had in terms of playing stuff. So, Kris, what is the first game that you would like to talk about from 2015?
I want to talk about Kingdom, which is a game that I came to relatively late in the year. When I was at EGX this year, I saw it in the res zone, just sitting there. And now I think someone was playing it, and I waited to play it for like 5 minutes because it looked cool. And I sat down, and I played it, and it's one of the most just entrancing games I've ever played. It's so simple. So the basic premise is that you are a king or a queen on a horse, and you ride into like this small tiny camp with 2 people in it. And you have a bunch of gold in your purse, and you're going to found a new kingdom. And gold is the only mechanic. Gold's like the only resource there. That's all you have, is just simple gold, and stuff just costs like an amount of gold. So you go through, and that's pretty much all you're doing. Is you are founding this place, and it's kind of like if you took a 4X game and made it 2D, but with more like sim management aspects in it as well, and a little dash of not necessarily turn-based strategy, but kind of tower defense where stuff comes in waves. So yeah, you build your kingdom up in the daytime, you spend your gold, and you get a little bit extra gold at the start of every day. Plus, you can send out hunters or farmers to go and earn you gold, and you spend it on builders and people like that who are reinforcing walls for you or building catapults. And eventually, if you build your kingdom up far enough, you get knights, which I've only that took me through. I've only managed to do that about twice, I think.
Right.
But that's quite a big investment to get knights. And that's one way you can spend your daytime, or you can go explore the forest to recruit new people and maybe find more resources, or there's weird kind of statue things that will give, because you have archers that can hunt or defend your base, and so it gives them a boost. And if you boost them all the way up, they basically become like these deadly snipers, which is just hilarious to watch.
They're pretty rubbish to start off with. Yeah. It's sort of like there's a rabbit, and they take about 5 minutes to kill the sodding rabbit and turn it into a coin.
Yeah, but if you go and get that full parrot all the way up, it's absolutely crazy. They're just like pinpoint killing everything they see. And nice. What happens at the night is, not every night, but most nights, you get attacked by a wave of these kind of little. I think in the original game, which was a Flash game, they're called Noodlers. I'm not sure if they have a name in the full version, but they're kind of like just almost zombie horde things. They're kind
I
of,
think they're just like monsters.
yeah,
They're not really zombies. I mean, they shuffle
they're
towards
kind of,
you,
they're
but
kind
they
of
are
more
monsters
just
more
monsters,
than...
but they're basically magpies, really. In that they just want your gold, and so they will, if they encounter a villager because you basically turn your villagers into like builders or archers or farmers or whatever by giving them a tool, and they will just nick that villager's tool and it turns them back into a normal villager, which is a pain because then you have to go and rebuy the tool for that villager. But they will just nick whatever your villagers are holding, or they can nick your villagers. Like, they have a gold piece that makes them your villager, and if that goes away, they go back to being...
Call it the King's Shilling.
Yeah,
yes.
basically it's the King's Shilling, yeah. And they go back to being just go back to being like a wild person in the woods almost. Yeah, so they will try and pinch that, and if they get to you, they will nick your gold, and if you haven't got any gold left, they'll pinch your crown. If they get your crown, it's game over. And it's, the game over screen makes me laugh every time I see it, because it's just, you can't have a kingdom without a crown. That's all it says on the screen. There's something very amusing about it. I think the things I like of this game, and I think probably the main thing for me, is that time and distance are meaningful. Like, if you want to issue orders, you have to ride your horse to the place you want to issue an order, which is like build a thing or something like that.
Yeah. Chop down this tree.
You have
to walk over to the actual tree.
Yeah, and say, yeah, come and chop it down. You have to physically go and do it yourself. You can't send out, like in Civilization, you can't send out a search party for you to go and like scout ahead, etc. You have to go and do it yourself. And that mechanic of, I guess, humanizing the ruler, because in most kind of 4X games or sim management games, you're reasonably omniscient. Like, you know, at least where your forces are, you know everything that's going on with your forces.
Yeah.
And it's the complete opposite here, is you know what's going on of what's on the screen, and that's literally all you know, and there's no way to know anything else.
I think there's almost, like with that idea, there's almost something quite powerful in taking that omniscience away from someone.
Absolutely.
So there was one game, like around about the turn of the century, which was a strategy game, but it was a third-person strategy game, and you were like this warlock or this wizard on the battlefield, and the camera was right behind you. But but you had a whole army to command, and so there's maybe something like a Napoleonic War thing where you are Napoleon or whatever, and you are just in one part of the battlefield, and all that you're getting is the reports of what's going on, but you've got to issue commands. Or you can wander outside and you can try and have a look and see what's going on, but you don't have the overview of the battlefield. I think there's an idea in that.
Absolutely. Like I say, it's a very powerful thing to take that power away, and to subvert the tropes of the genre. But it also just, like I say, it just really humanizes this ruler. It almost makes you feel sorry for politicians and sort of leaders of modern countries.
Never feel sorry for politicians.
but just because, like, obviously they've got a much bigger support network, but it's impossible to know everything that's going on. Like, you can't hold all that information in your head. And even if people are coming giving you daily briefings, you can't hold everything you're told in your head. It's just not possible. And on this small level, Kingdom gives you that feeling, like, just really gives you that feeling. And that to me is a really important thing. But I just, I like the way it plays with those kind of things. I like the way that it makes distances much more meaningful than anything else does, because you, like, when you play Command and Conquer or SimCity or whatever, you can have stuff going on in one place, but you can go and do a bunch of stuff somewhere else at the same time while it's happening.
Yeah.
And that's just not possible in Kingdom. You're doing what you're doing, and that's all you're doing. It would be like that if you were in Kingdom. I mean, maybe you would have runners go out and do stuff for you. It makes you feel a lot more finite rather than being able to view over this whole place. And it's something that it made me think a lot about how other games don't really deal with time in a particularly human manner, in that time in most games is just a clock goes round, and that's not really how, as a human being, you experience time. Like, you are bound to a clock, obviously, but you're just having a clock kind of abstracts it away. and abstracts away the details of life and the time it takes to get places and the time it takes to do a thing. And by making time a much more meaningful resource in the game, by forcing you to go and do stuff, I really appreciated that. I really liked a game that was doing something slightly different in that area.
Yeah, we've seen that a couple of times this year, actually. Because with Kingdom, you have to be aware of when the sun is going to set.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't want to go.
Yeah, so you can't
as the sun's going down. You don't want to go to a tree and say chop down this tree,
which then, I've done way too many times.
Yeah, I kind of find that a bit annoying when playing the game, because it's like, okay, I want to say to chop down this tree, but also don't go outside yet. Like, do it in the morning. What are you guys doing?
Yeah,
what's wrong with you?
I think the one thing that is frustrating is that you can't cancel your actions, but it also feels like that is kind of core to the gameplay mechanics. I kind of feel if you added that, the game might be lesser for it.
Maybe ever so slightly. I think like it would make it ever so slightly more accessible.
Yeah, it would make it more accessible, and I think more importantly, it would make it easier. And that's not. I don't think that's what the developer's going for here. It feels like a very deliberate choice that you can't cancel an action.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. But there's a few other games which have done things with time and day and night this year. So, City Skylines, for example, with their DLC, they added in the day-night cycle where you've got a separate budget panel for nighttime. Crime goes up. You've got to put out more coppers. You might think that, oh, hold on, there's going to be less traffic at nighttime, so I can put out the garbage.
Yeah, that's actually one of the best day and night systems I've seen in the game.
That's a clever one.
Yeah, because, like you say, because night has a meaningful difference to day rather than just it's darker.
Yeah. And the other one that I think's worth mentioning is Dying Light from Tech.
Oh, yeah.
Because in that, you've got the zombies at all times of the day, but they're sort of a bit, ironically, a bit sleepy at daytime.
Yeah.
And they don't really pay you too much attention. They're just shambling about, so you can go around and do whatever you want, basically. As soon as the nighttime falls, then out come the zombies who will actually actively hunt and chase after you and run after you as well. And they come out in numbers. And so then, whereas the daytime, it's all action, it's all like, you can knock heads in as much as you want. At nighttime, then it's more stealth. You've got to avoid stuff, or you can find a safe zone and go to sleep and wait for the next daytime.
Yeah.
And conversely, you can wait until nighttime, because that's when you get better rewards. You've got certain zombies, like, it's not just the ones that hunt you, but you've got different zombies which give you different things if you manage to catch them and stuff like that. So I think that's another clever use of day and night. And yeah, I think it's a powerful thing, and it's something which more developers might start to investigate over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think it's something that's been a little bit overlooked, perhaps just because it requires more development time and requires more processor, more power to run it, to have that difference. But as computers and consoles, etc., continue to get more powerful, you've always got more power to play with to make your simulations more accurate, if that's what you're going for, of course.
Yeah. Okay, so back to your year, I think. You've been out and about a few times. You went to Rezzed and EGX. Yeah,
so Rezzed is quite easy for me. I mean, it's in London, but I stayed there. But it's personally, that's probably the best show I've been to. You went, didn't you? You went for one day.
Yes, I did.
It's such a nice show, isn't it? It's so small and intimate.
I think because they had it at Tobacco Docks this year.
Yeah, and that's what it's going to be next year as well, in 2016.
And it's a really nice venue. There's lots of glass. It just feels, it feels a bit arty.
It does, but it also feels a lot more open than the Earl's Court did or the NEC does. It just feels like a much airier environment, and also because things are in everything's segregated into small rooms, which actually makes the games a lot more accessible, because you're not having to fight past a dozen other games to get to the one game you want.
Some rooms were a bit too crammed. I remember the Microsoft.
Yeah, the
Xbox
Microsoft room was
was just horrible because it was just like every game had one console and they managed to put stuff about 15 games into that room and it was just so packed.
Yeah, I think the problem with them was they treated it like a normal show, and I don't think anyone else there really did.
Yeah.
Everyone else realised that it was slightly different and kind of adjusted their setups accordingly, but I imagine that Microsoft probably were fairly substantial sponsors of the show, so they can kind of do what they want, would be my guess.
They wanted to play a game of sardines with actual humans. They just wanted to toy with people.
Well, the same reason that like Sony was there, because they sponsored it, and there was just like the weird Sony room and the weird Total War room. They were just like, and like ingeniously would set apart from the actual indie games so that they weren't as easy to find as any of the indie games. I thought that was an interesting layout. But I mean, those games did have reasonably big queues, but they weren't what I was there to play. They don't interest me in the slightest. Total War does a little bit, but not really.
Especially now that it's Warhammer.
Total War Warhammer was a good game. I like Warhammer, but I'm not interested in spending a lot of time queuing up to play those games because I don't have a top of the line PC, so they're not going to play it.
Right.
Whereas most of the indie games are going to run absolutely fine on whatever I've got. And so that was a really nice show, and it's really just chilled. It's just very calm, and it's nice that you can go and talk to actual developers about their game, which is not to say that people who show games at bigger shows don't know what they're talking about, but it tends to be like agency people who have been hired, and sometimes you get people from the team there, but they're not normally as willing to talk to you about stuff.
Well, I guess there's that kind of wall. So, like, we could talk about EGX as well, and you ran around and you played lots of games.
I played lots of games and did lots of interviews and stuff there, and then you moaned at me because they were too long.
It's because they were 25 minutes, and I'm just like, do I have to transcribe all of this?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I like to talk to people.
You've been dragging your feet a bit on the transcription, so I will do this for you. That's fine. Like,
that's why I was dragging my feet, because they're 25 minutes long.
I know. But the thing is that there, with EGX, it's more, here's a big game, here's a game which lots of people are going to want to play, so now there's a big queue for it, and obviously the 90% of these people don't need to want to be dragged past the narrative director that you spoke to for Homefront, The Revolution?
Yeah, I think that was it, yeah.
I think it was something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But
basically a fancy title for writer.
Yeah. And so, like, most of the people don't need to see that. So you've got the PR and the just like the people who have been hired for this particular event to shuffle people into queues.
Yeah.
And then for the handful, because EGX isn't really a press event much.
Yeah.
There's occasional opportunities for interviews, but there's not much beyond that. And so that's very different to Res because the companies want something different out of it.
Yeah, Res is, like you say, it's just a lot more open. You can genuinely just go and talk to people and kind of just like, if you want to, just hang out with them for the whole day, which I kind of like, because I know the people who work at Roll7 quite well, and obviously they are part of Devolver Digital now. I don't know if they are part of, but they work with them, and they've published some of their stuff.
Devolver are just a publisher.
Yeah, but
really. They know what they're doing with marketing.
Yeah.
They've got very good at finding games which have got something unique about them.
Yeah. And so because they were working with Devolver Digital on Not a Hero, was what they were showing at the time. Because I think Ollie Ollie 2 was already out by then. But yeah, and so I was chatting away to them for a day, well, not a whole day, but for like quite a while, and talking to. They introduced me to other people that they knew from the Devolver stand, and that was all just enjoyable, and that's a good way to do stuff. And then there was a guy there who is making a game called, I think it's called Mighty Tactical Shooter. Turns out he works in the same building as I do. I just went, wait, I know you. Do you work at this place?
It's like, yeah, I do, because it's like a big business center. There's like 50 companies there or something. And yeah, and we just chatting away about his game, and he showed it off to me, and now I see him occasionally in Brighton, because I met other people from Brighton there, a random coincidence, who I didn't know at the time, but they invited me to come along to there's monthly Brighton game industry drinks. And that kind of show, it's a lot easier to, I guess it is networking, but it's just a lot easier to meet people, basically, because you can actually talk, like I say, you can talk to developers, which is useful for getting information about the game, but it's also useful for just making that contact.
I guess from their side of things, as developers, like, it's useful for them to like do a bit of networking. Like, they might not necessarily work on a project with the people that they meet, but there's absolutely nothing wrong or with meeting people who might be able to help you out in some way, and you can just talk and you can like bounce ideas off each other, that kind of thing. But
that's what I like about a show about Res. It's like, beyond the fact that it's a lot calmer than EGX is, and there's none of like, because EGX is edging towards E3, like just on this slow, inevitable trajectory, where E3 is fun to go to for like half a day. I could see walking around the floor for like half a day and being, oh, this is cool. And after that, it's just so loud and there's so many lights. And yeah, it's like the show floor at E3 is not an enjoyable place, in my opinion. And the queues are so long for everything there.
Yeah.
And I don't, is Gamescom like that? I've never been to Gamescom.
Gamescom is horrific.
Yeah. And EGX.
Like, there's the photos of, like, this is
the massive queues,
huge causeway. Yeah. No, not even that. There's
just this huge bulk of people moving. Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. That's why I personally don't queue for games at EGX, not necessarily just because I've seen a lot of them at Gamescom and stuff like that, but also because, like, that's, like, some of these queues will go on for like 2 hours or something. Like, people will they'll queue up for 2 hours to play a game for 15 minutes, and that's not something I'm interested in the slightest, and it's horrifically crowded. But when it comes to EGX and Gamescom, I'm often behind the scenes anyway. I'm in the press area doing interviews or whatever. And with Gamescom, like, the press area is huge. It is a little bit crowded because there's a lot of press wandering around. There's a lot of people with cameras and what have you, but it's fairly well organized. It's nowhere near as messy as the actual show floor for the punters.
Yeah. Well, and E3 is like that in that there's basically just an entire floor of the building that is pretty much off limits to, like, people who have show floor badges.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Like, there's pretty much a whole floor at E3 that is just, oh yeah, this is, if you've got press or exhibitor badges, you can wander around here and go to meetings and stuff. And because it's just like they've got like whole conference rooms for like one publisher, it's not like at EGX where you can go and talk to someone and that's nice and useful. Like, they've just got whole demo booths set up. I think I went to Namco Bandai, would have been, and they had like 6 units set up for Dark Souls 2 and 6 units set up for Pac-Man something, and then meeting rooms, and in the meeting rooms they had games set up on TVs. That is useful if you're in the press where you are trying to cover as many games as possible.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these appointments set up. And I think the year I went to E3, I only had maybe 2 hours where I could have been on the show floor. Like, and I did spend it wandering around and trying to get a go on a few games that I don't think I managed to get on. But yeah, most of the time at E3, press people have so many appointments that you don't really see the show floor unless it's to walk to somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's the point. Like, having appointments and being able to, like, avoid having to queue up for stuff, that is the best use of your time when you're on the press side of things, and it's the best use of the publisher's time.
Yeah.
And the developer's time and all of this, like, having everything on a schedule. That's just how it needs to happen. Otherwise, nothing will get done, ever.
Which is not to say the public shouldn't be given access to games. They absolutely should. They should be allowed to go and see it. And the simple reality of it is it's not practical to give everyone from the public who wants to see a game the same level of access as people from the press.
Well, I mean, and that's just, like, within the game as well. Like, because the previews that I see and that I write, it's like there's a lot of rough edges, and you can't show that to the public because the public's going to play that. They're going to come away from it with a bad experience.
Absolutely.
And then they're not going to be interested or excited about the game anymore.
And the public demo is 15 minutes, maybe?
Maybe, like 15 minutes
15
tops
minutes
usually.
tops, which doesn't give you a lot of time to find those rough edges. And a press demo is like an hour or two.
Well, I mean, that really depends on what the game is and what they want to show. But yeah, it's a lot more open, and like,
I would say it's not uncommon, not necessarily at shows, but if you go to like other preview things, it's not uncommon to be given a game for like an hour to play.
Yeah.
Or even where you go to stuff. Well, I've been to stuff where it's like half a day. Like I went to Halo. I'm trying to think which Halo it was. Halo 4, maybe?
Halo Horse.
No, Halo Reach. It was Halo Reach.
Right.
And it was like half a day in the Cabinet War Rooms, which is a bit weird. But yeah, it was like half a day there just playing like the game. I think it was all multiplayer. But yeah, it was a half a day playing that, and that's fine. That works when you've got, okay, we have like 30, 40 people from the press. We want to show them this game, so they'll fit in one room and done. Whereas we have like whatever it is at EGX, 20,000 people a day or something ludicrous. And we want to show them the game, and they're going to have to queue because that's the only way we can do this.
Yeah.
And it's annoying, and they do need to get a little bit better about it because there were games where it was getting ridiculous this year.
That's, I think, publishers, like as EGX grows into the space that's available for it at the NEC.
Yeah, I think it's going to be better next year.
It's going to be better. They're going to bring more consoles to it as well. There's stuff like all of the consoles and things that they have at Gamescom. They can all be shipped over to the UK, set up for the NEC, and then they can head over to Paris Games Week and stuff like that. And so it's like, you know, there might be the same demos or very similar demos.
They're pretty much always the 90% of the time it's the exact same demo.
Very often, yeah.
I would say probably 40% of the time it's the E3 demo. I've definitely had that a lot.
Publishers do tend to make a bit of an effort to get a new demo done for Gamescom, but a lot of the time, they can still fall back onto an E3 demo.
Yeah, which is it's a lot of the time it's just they couldn't get something ready in time.
Mm-hmm.
Like they were like, sorry, we tried to get you another demo, but we're building this game as well. Like people don't seem to. This is an important.
No,
thing
it literally takes weeks, maybe even months to get a special demo done for E3 and Gamescom.
Exactly, it's an important thing to remember. Like a demo is not just saying, "Oh, cool, well we have the game at this point, freeze it and just pump it off in a demo." You do that, and that is step one of about 50 steps of paring it down to the area that you want to show people and be able to show them the gameplay in which you want to show them out of order from the real game. And all this kind of stuff that you've got to put into a demo that is nothing like playing the real game.
I mean, it has to go into its own loop of quality assurance.
Yes, exactly. Which is much less stringent than normal quality assurances because there's not time. But it does go
and like little bugs are like fine. You know, it's running on debug kits and stuff like that. So, but
the only time it is a little bit concerning is when you see stuff like Assassin's Creed, where you're like, I know this is a demo, but this is also like 2 weeks away from launch.
Yeah.
And I have concerns about this game.
No, it can be like that, but there's also like there's what was it? I remember it might have been Beyond Two Souls, and I remember or even Heavy Rain or something like that. I remember I always get the name mixed up because now there's the game. The developer's name is Quantic Dream and Quantum Break.
Quantum Break is the game, Quantic Dream is the developer.
But it could be Quantic Break as far as I'm concerned. You know,
it could quite easily.
It could very, very easily. And I remember them posting, like just tweeting something along the lines of, here's the list of all of the bugs that we know about and need to fix in the next 3 weeks before release. And it was like 7 pages long. It's like hundreds of bugs that they're trying to get through. And with a developer the size of Ubisoft, with a publisher the size of Ubisoft, with the number of bodies that they have on something like that, even like two weeks before release for the day one patch, they can fix hundreds and hundreds of bugs. It's just that when you see the game, at a very late stage, you have to sort of, and you need to try and write about it, you have to sort of balance between, is this too many bugs that I think they can fix in this amount of time? Are they serious bugs? Or is it going to be done and is it going to be fine? And as soon as people install that patch, they're going to be all right. And it's a tricky one to balance.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah. Right, I think we should talk about your second game at this point. What is the second thing that you want to talk about?
Okay, so Batman, because I like Batman. Like, let's
Classic
talk about
Kris.
Batman. That's a pretty good game, right? Like, it wasn't brilliant, but it was very enjoyable if you ignore the fact that ignore all the Batmobile stuff, because it was not particularly good.
That was the thing that got the most stick, I think.
Yeah, oh man, that's just that's not a good bit of that game.
And also, like the thing that was most lampooned was the Riddler as well.
What the fuck is the Riddler doing building racetracks?
It's
Just
not
these huge racetracks under the city.
But it's not only that. It's like, riddle me this.
Riddle me this. Go
riddle
race.
me this. Go and complete this time trial in under 2 minutes 20. That's a riddle now? Okay. Yeah. Lewis Hamilton is a fantastic riddle solver in this case. It's just like, what?
Yeah, man. That game has issues.
Yes. And they've, they also had the problems on PC. But I mean, I assume that because you want to talk about it, you still enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed that game. That game was a lot of fun. And the story is really good. I feel for people who are familiar with the Batman mythos, it's probably a little bit obvious, but it's still told well.
The identity of the Arkham Knight you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, that particular story beat, I think people who are invested in the Batman mythos will probably had a pretty good guess 6 months before that game came out about who it was, and they were like, oh, okay, yeah. But it's not bad. It's still done in a good way, and it actually, given that I kind of had guessed and my guess was confirmed without spoiling it, they still reveal it in a good way, I think, and the plot is well done overall. It perhaps has a few issues with the way it treats women, which I definitely like. I can't remember what it was, but I watched a video about it after I'd played it, and someone was like, kind of pointed out the issues and broke them down. I was like, oh fuck yeah, they're right. It does not treat women well in that game. They're not good.
I think that's something which developers are slowly but surely getting wise to.
Yeah.
And I mean, we also still see it in films and TV as well, and the world
absolutely,
in general.
absolutely, yeah. It's not to say that they're alone at all.
No.
I think as well, because they've been treated, particularly Catwoman, has been treated in a better light in the previous games, and Poison Ivy as well. I thought they were a little bit underwhelming in this game at points. But overall, it's... I don't know if it is the best of them, because I really like Arkham City. But I think the individual elements of Arkham Knight are probably better than the individual elements of Arkham City, but Arkham City is better as a package, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like, if you take everything together, I think Arkham City has less, like, down notes than Arkham Knight does. Yeah, the Batmobile stuff is incredibly frustrating. The fact that you have to beat all the Riddler trophies if you want the full finish of the game is a little bit irritating. But I also think it probably has better side stories than the other open world games in that series do. Like, it's got much better side missions, and the side missions link together much better, and deal with villains much more interestingly, like smaller villains. And it is, I think it does a very, very good job at tying that whole series together. You know? None of the other games really feel like they're super connected to the other games in the series, and this one very explicitly is, and like completely ties everything up in this really nice, neat package. and I haven't got the full ending yet, because I think we're going to talk about the reason I haven't got that in a minute, but I will in a second. But in general, everything gets kind of pulled together, and that's a really good thing. And also without, again, I can't talk about this really, but the game's secondary villain is probably the best villain overall I've seen in a very long time. I assume you know who I'm talking about. Have you played it?
I have only played it very briefly. I think I talked in my year recording too. I talked about how I've struggled to actually like play games for fun as much. And Batman Arkham Knight it's on my list of things to do. The thing is that I didn't actually finish City either.
Oh, okay.
I really loved Asylum. I thought that was possibly the best game because it came out in like 2008 or something, 2009.
It was a while ago now, but yeah, something like that.
And it was sort of, I don't know, I think that caught a lot of people unawares that it was happening. And like, did they release a demo? They did something where I was like, this is awesome. And so I bought that game, and I remember it came out at the end of August, which is an unusual time for a game to come out. But it was really, really good. And I absolutely loved that. The only problem that I had with it was that I wasn't quite good enough at the combat to do it without the notifications above people's heads, so I didn't do it on hard. And I sucked at the kind of challenges. Like I hit a brick wall with the challenge mode, so I'm a little bit away from getting that platinum, which was one of the things that I like to do back then. When City came out, I sort of like got about halfway through, I think, and then I did my usual thing of putting it down. And then I reviewed Origins. Was it Origins? The one not made by Rocksteady?
Yeah, that's not as good, really.
It's not as good. They fell back on an all too familiar Batman villain once again.
Yeah.
Because that is basically all Batman games and all Batman stories. It's always the sodding Joker somehow.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit disappointing, but yeah. So it's just that I haven't finished City, so I don't know really what happens in that story, because I'm actually quite lucky that I don't get much stuff spoiled for me in my life. So I want to eventually get around to finishing.
I would say
City.
It's worth finishing City.
Yeah, I played about half hour earlier on in the year, because I was just like, I should try and finish City before Night comes out, or before I play Night.
Yeah.
And just didn't manage to follow through on that desire.
Also, I think the thing with Origins, we talk about the Joker, is the way the Joker is integrated in Origins is just such a fuck you, to the fans. It's just like, no, you're getting the fucking Joker and you'll like it. You're like, oh, I kind of thought we weren't getting the Joker this time.
Yeah, no, the entire marketing was centered around, is it Black Mask?
Black Mask, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily spoil it, but yeah.
No,
the way that pans out is.
But it's just that like he was the one front and center in all of the marketing, and it's sort of like I think it was like you've got assassins coming to try and kill the Batman and stuff like that, and it set up all of this epic, Batman against the world for the first proper time, and then it kind of didn't really pan out, and just the way the Joker does eventually appear, and it's just like, oh, okay, fine.
Yeah, it's just a huge fuck you. It's just terrible.
This again,
absolutely terrible.
But like it was still a competent game. Like it just didn't really do much more. And so I think that if Warner do want to keep doing more Batman games, which they certainly do still want to do, then I can't remember. I think it was like a Canadian Warner Brothers studio. Ontario, maybe I want to say.
I think it's Montreal.
Montreal. Well, everything's in Montreal.
Yeah.
If they want to do another one, like I'd be happy to see what another studio can do again. That studio can do again, because it's a learning process. It's always a learning process.
I also think I'd be interested, given that Rocksteady have now said we're done with Batman.
Yeah.
I would be interested to see if another studio does Batman and kind of breaks away from the Rocksteady template. I'd be interested to see what someone else's take on it is at this point.
Yeah, I think the problem is that Rocksteady have basically defined combat systems for like a 5 to 10 year generation.
Yeah, that's kind of like everyone has very much. I mean, to be fair, they are. If you play the first game and you compare it to Assassin's Creed, they're very explicitly iterating on what Assassin's Creed was doing, but they've just done it a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, it's quite funny to see how the Batman combat has been folded back into Assassin's Creed now, especially with the most recent one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the first, I guess probably the second Assassin's Creed might have been out by then as well. But the combat in those for early Assassin's Creed games isn't brilliant. And Batman kind of went, "Oh, we see what you're going for here. We'll just do it right, shall we? Just do it properly. Look, we did it better, guys. Don't worry about it."
I think what it was in the first 2 Assassin's Creed games, it was very much you wait for them to attack you, you block and counter.
Yeah,
you never hit them.
Yeah, Batman's a lot more offensive.
Yeah, he's more offensive, but like his counters, they also happen instantly.
Yeah,
so you've kind of got like a combo break almost.
Yeah, and his counters are also like just ridiculously offensive counters as well.
His counters are basically him like leaping, jumping halfway across the sodding room because he saw that one guy looks at him dodgy.
Yeah, and just like punch you in the nose. It's brilliant. Oh, it's such a good game.
When the bad guy least expects it.
It's such a good game. I love that series.
What do you think for the Telltale game?
It's going to be really interesting what they're going to do. I'm hoping, because I guess that's been the one major failing of Rocksteady's Batman games, is they're not very detective-y. Yeah. And if they do something that's much more detective-based, that would be really interesting. I mean, they try to do some stuff where you kind of get like the HUD overlay thing that's not like the Bat Vision, but where you can kind of rewind time and stuff that I think came in Origins.
That was in Origins, yeah.
And then it's also in Arkham Knight. But that's not really detective-y. That's like stand in this place and the computer fills in the blanks for you. That's not really my opinion on what a detective is. So I think like if we can get Batman interrogating someone, that'd be awesome. That'd be really cool.
It's basically about 5 seconds after Telltale announced this game because it was at the Game Awards.
Yeah, the Game Awards, yeah.
Jeff Keighley's thing. About 5 seconds later, someone had already knocked up a mock-up of what the Batman game would look like, and I think it was Batman throttling the Joker. And it might have been like a screenshot from one of the films. He's throttling the Joker, and then the 4 dialogue options that he has are "I'm Batman, I'm Batman, I'm Batman, and I'm Batman."
I'd play that.
I would, yeah. It's just like every single dialogue. I'm Batman.
Yeah. So the reason I was going to tell you about, because this is something we said we wanted to talk about before the interview. So the reason I haven't got the final ending on Batman Arkham Knight is because I've talked about this a couple of times actually on this series. But I got to I've got everything done except for the last few Riddler trophies, and I got to this weekend in July. And I went, cool, I've just got those, I'll do that next weekend. I've got these few Riddler trophies, I'll do it next weekend, it'll be fine. And the next day, I play football on Monday, so I went to football, as I do most Mondays. And it was very wet, and something happened, and I played in goal, and my friend kicked a ball at me, as you do to a goalkeeper, tends to be the way.
No, generally you try and kick the ball.
I mean, that's true.
Not at the goalkeeper.
Clearly, if I was less good as a goalkeeper, the next thing wouldn't have happened. So the next thing that happened was I put my arm out to save it, and the ball hit me, I think hits me flush on the palm of my hand, and hyperextends my wrist and breaks my wrist, which it turns out makes console gaming really difficult. I don't know if you knew this, but it's kind of hard to play a game when you've got one hand and the other one doesn't really do very much for like 2 months. So yeah, I had a month of it in a cast and a month of it in a
so like a splint type thing.
Yeah, splint type thing. And luckily, I think a week before I went to EGX, they said you don't need to wear the splint anymore. You're not fine, but you don't need that for support, which is good.
Okay, you're okay-ish now.
Yeah, well I didn't want to go to EGX with a splint on, really.
And so that was one of the bigger things that happened to me this year. And so I probably don't have full range of motion because I was stupid and didn't stretch it as much as I was supposed to. But I got pretty good range, but it still kind of hurts a little bit sometimes. And I guess that'll probably fix itself. They said in September, they were like, look, you've got 4 months in which it's kind of still going to be healing, and you might not get full range of motion back, but you're probably going to have most of it. I do have most of it. I probably only maybe like 10 degrees down on my other wrist. The only real problem is, imagine you're sitting on the ground, and what you would do to get up is you'd put your hand down, like palm flat on the ground, and push up, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't do that with my right arm, really. So
I guess the nice thing is that you've got a left arm.
Yeah, I mean that's useful. But what I've actually got it's handy. But what I've actually got into the habit of doing is, I literally just, because I'm left-handed, so if I'm getting up, I tend to be holding something in my left hand.
Okay.
And so what I've actually, and this just seems to be how I do it now, and I kind of hadn't really noticed, is I just make my hand into a fist and just push up off my fist, because then it's just going straight through the wrist. It only hurts if I bend it.
I see.
So yeah, it's mostly all right. There are still points where, like if I'm carrying shopping or something,
Yeah.
and I kind of like, I should switch that to the other hand because that doesn't feel good. But beyond that, it's pretty much fine. And also I can use a mouse ambidextrously now, because I had to use my left hand for several months.
Yes, that is another thing. I mean, you could have switched to, like, trackpads are fairly good these days.
Yeah, but I kind of find a mouse is better, really.
A mouse is quicker and better, but like the other thing is, like, the way that you hold a mouse, it's putting your bones and your muscles in your arm and a keyboard as well into an unnatural position. You kind of want to have it like a palm to the side of your body at
Yeah.
The two palms would be facing each other in parallel lines.
So are you suggesting he's suggesting what I need is like a trackpad on my hip, so I can just have my hand down there flat?
Well, no, but you can get the you can get sort of like upright mice for one.
Can you? That's
example.
really interesting.
Where
I didn't know that.
The mouse is sort of like 90 degrees to what the most common design is.
Okay.
And I mean, those are very uncommon to find these, but you can get some of those. Also, like a trackball. That's another thing. And it's sort of like, because these are what people use for when they've got RSI.
So Davs, I know, used to use trackball a lot. I don't know why, but yeah, I should look at maybe like a horizontal or vertical mouse. Whether that sounds really interesting. I'd just like to see one more than anything. They just look
cool. a bit like strange, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's just ever so slightly odd.
I have
as I said, they are actually quite uncommon. I don't think there's been a proper one made by anyone in the last 5 years.
I guess what you could do is get like the big Apple trackpads. Yeah. Just get one of those and put it on its side. It's the same thing.
You could do that. You could put it wherever you want.
Yeah, same thing basically. No, I looked at getting one of those Apple trackpads actually for work, because I've switched to using an iMac relatively recently, and we have got like Apple mice in the office, but we find that they break all the time.
And they're rubbish. They're just because they don't have any buttons, and so it's like trying to use context sensitivity to figure out if you'd want to do a right click and all this nonsense. And it's like,
well, it's not just that. It's so the thing we found is the batteries run down on them terribly, absolutely awful. The contactless charging thing doesn't always seem to work properly, and if you've got a tiny notch on your table, that will trigger like the on-off switch on it, and you'll randomly just get a flash on your screen that's like mouse disconnected.
That is dumb.
Which is basically like if you've got like one crumb on your table, it will manage to catch on it and just turn it off.
I've not been particularly impressed with Apple's like peripheral design this year.
Yeah,
like the pencil. Like I get what they're doing with it, but the way that it charges is
so stupid.
Strange.
That's basically like, do you want to break it? You could break this super easy, right?
Yeah, I think that's why they sort of decided that they needed to have a battery which you could charge up in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just some strange oddities. And the other thing is, like, they came out with this new keyboard, which has got the internal battery, so you don't need to put new AA batteries in it. They came out with the new trackpad, which has got the force feedback type thingy in it, so you can like feel the click, but it's not actually clicking, but it's your brain thinks it's clicking. And then they sort of like stick them there for like 80, 90, 100 quid or something each, and it's just like, what is wrong with you people?
Yeah, no one's going to buy it at that
Nobody's,
price.
Yeah.
Well, people are.
I want one, but I'm not anywhere near willing to pay that amount for it.
Yeah, they get so much more money if they lowered it like 20, 30%.
Yeah, I think it might just be because it's still relatively new technology that they've created.
I mean, the haptic feedback thing is awesome. Like, that's
it's very
really
clever.
Cool. Yeah.
Like
they basically went like, normal haptic feedback stuff is shit. It takes 9 rotations. 9? 1 rotation. Boom. Which that was like a weirdly awesome bit of one of their press conferences this year where they were talking about it.
Oh, I think that was for the iPhone, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they were just like, fuck 9 rotations. That's way too long.
Yeah. So like when you broke your wrist, was this because you started running?
So that's unrelated. So
okay.
running has been a more recent thing. Which I am enjoying. I have done less of it recently than I want to because I've been working on all these bloody podcasts. And by the time I'm finished, I get home from work and I'm like, oh, I guess it's like 10:30. Oh. But yeah, now that these are done, I am very much going to be doing running, and hopefully, I'll be getting some wireless headphones for Christmas as well, because wired ones
have
are
you been
right.
a good boy?
I have been. I feel I've been reasonably good.
Reasonably good.
Yeah. So
you're just going to get wired headphones because Santa's like, could have been better.
I don't want. I've already got wired ones, and they're so fucking annoying because I've got one of the armband things for your phone, you know.
Right. Yeah.
But then you put the cable, and then it just gets tangled to your arm and stuff while you're trying to run along. It's very inconvenient. So I'm hopefully I think I get some wireless ones. They will be much more useful. And I won't end up tangled all the time, which would be a nice change of pace. But yeah, so one of the things, I'm not a very confident person, I suppose. And I kind of always had this weird feeling that if I go running, like, people would laugh at me. And I don't know why. It's such a fucking stupid thing. But it's that same reason that you don't want to go to the gym, right? Because the gym is full of fit people. Whereas you fear it should be full of people getting fit, but it seems to be permanently full of people who are already quite fit. But yeah, and you just feel really uncomfortable. And one day I just went running, and it turns out no one gives a shit.
No, it's true.
No one looks at you at all. And it's that realization, like, oh yeah, of course no one looks at me. Why would they look at me? I don't matter to them. So yeah, the only thing I've avoided doing is so the route I run goes right by a school, like a secondary school. Mm-hmm. I probably thought it's not wise to run by there when it's like kicking out time or when they're coming in, just because that's going to just be too many people for a start.
Also, kids are mean and they might actually laugh at you.
Yeah, that's my other thought is kids are mean and kids would actually laugh because kids are dicks. Like
we were
teenagers.
both once children, and I distinctly remember being mean.
Yeah. Well, imagine like you don't want to run near moody teenagers, do you?
No.
They are just going to laugh at you. But yeah, the kind of it was just this weird realization that in general, like, no one cares if you're running. Like, they're not paying any attention to you. Why would they be? And that's that was quite freeing and quite nice. Because I realized, like, I kind of thought about it and then, well, I don't do anything when I see people running, do I? So why would anyone else? So yeah. So I'm enjoying that. And hopefully I might be able to do, I'm hoping that sometime next year I could do like get up to like a 5k or a 10k and like in an actual race context and go from there.
No, I tried to do a bit of running this
You're the
summer.
wrong size. You're too big.
No, that just makes it easier.
Oh, I suppose it makes you go faster. But I think it'd probably be very bad on your knees.
Well, what I found was, because you know that I wear these stupid toe shoes.
Yes, you wear stupid. You shouldn't wear them. They're very bad for running.
No, they're fine actually. You just have to land on the ball of your feet as opposed to your heel.
Oh no, wait, they're not bad for running, but there was that whole lawsuit in the States where they were like, they're really good for running, and they're like, no, they're not. They're just like normal.
They're normal. The stresses that go into your legs, you're still putting the same amount of stress in your legs. It's just it goes to different parts of your leg.
Oh, okay.
But it's more like so instead of it smacking onto your heel, it's trying to use the elasticity of like the natural like construction. Anyway, it's all nonsense. Whatever. It's fine. I like the shoes. Whatever. But I've got trainers which have also got similarly very thin soles, and those are what I would wear for running. And it was just running on pavement, and I don't run on the pavements too much, and I've got some parks nearby which I go through, and I run like across the grass and the ground a bit. So it's a bit more uneven, which is good for like your balance to a certain degree, as long as you don't stack it and twist your ankle. But eventually I just started getting like kind of like shin splints, just like pain in the shins, and it was just and that was just because like I eventually did go and see a doctor, and she's just like, well, it's probably just something like the muscle had got like a little bit torn away from the bone or something like that, and so as it was mending, I could just try and strengthen it, and I just haven't started running again since then because of being a bit busy, and
the problem is like this time of year it does get very busy.
Yeah, I'm thinking that I might join the hordes of millions of people who decide to go running for a week at the start of next year.
Yeah, see, that kind of puts me off that bit.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm thinking, maybe about February I'll start running again, and also like the weather will start to improve around that point.
Yeah, I mean that is a big upside.
Okay, and I think a nice place to wrap things up would be to talk about your last game, a third game of 2015.
Okay, so this is where I was torn. There are two games. I really like Prison Architect, and I really like Lara Croft Go. But I can't remember who it was, but I'm sure someone, it might have been Dan Marshall, talked about Lara Croft Go on this podcast. So I'm going to talk about Prison Architect because no one's talked about that. But by the way, you should play Lara Croft Go. It's really good. You can get on like iOS and Android and stuff. It'll take you like maybe 4 hours, 5 hours, and it's a lot of fun. Prison Architect is a completely different game to that, where it's another sim management game. But instead of being like a whole city or a kingdom, as Kingdom is, it's one prison. It's from Introversion, who I've been long-time fans of. They made Uplink and Darwinia and DEF CON. And so, this game is kind of, because I talked to them at EGX, and apparently it spun out of another game they were going to make called Subversion, where there was kind of like a prison level in it, and they were building like the game editor tools to build a prison and make the prison work. And they went, this could just be a game. It would actually be a better game than the game we're making. So they stopped making the other game and started making this. And so you are running a full prison, and it's everything. It's probably the most immersive sim management games that I can think of, because you have to build like the foundations for something first, and then you go through and then you put internal walls in, and then you zone the rooms inside the building once you've got the internal walls in, and all this kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know what it is, but there's just something very almost therapeutic about it, because it's just the level of thought that has to go into it.
The catharsism of locking people up in prisons.
It's not necessarily that. But the building element of it, because you have to really think about how you're going to lay your building out for like maximum efficiency. It's even got a tool that lets you like design blueprints, so you can like put down a blueprint of the building you want to build and tweak that, and then leave it in place and build your building over the top of the blueprint, which is really useful. Oh,
that's clever.
Yeah, that's like, I don't think many other games have done that either. That's a really smart idea, because you want to maximize space and stuff, because so each room has a requirement, and that requirement, one of the requirements is always space, I think. So it's like, it has to be like a prison cell has to be 3 squares by 2 squares, and you can build bigger than that, but you can't build smaller than that. And as it turns out, depressingly, If you build solitary confinement, I believe the limit is 1 square by 1 square. So
Right.
it's just a 1 square room with a door, and that is solitary confinement.
Pretty much
Which is fucking depressing to think about.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about this game, is it is depressing as hell. So you have all the stuff where you are building these buildings, and you have to go and lay the water and lay the electrical cable and all that kind of stuff, and set up a canteen, and you're kind of building all these services, and it feels very normal and natural. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, we got prisoners now, that's fine. Okay, now I need to take guard patrols. Now, oh, okay, so there's a riot. So I have to bring in these guys and do that. And the game itself is quite depressing, but the campaign they've got, which is kind of like a combination campaign tutorial, that is incredibly depressing, where the first level is you build a execution facility for a guy. And the game basically tells you have to build the execution facility. And there's like an actual cutscene where it details the fact that prisons are not making the law; they're simply enforcing the law. Like they're simply enforcing the punishment that the courts have set upon the prisoner. And so, so you execute a guy is like one of the first things you do if you play through the game's campaign tutorial thing. Like you do a bunch of stuff, and you build an execution chamber, and you can make it nice if you want to, or you can make it horrid, but you have to kill the guy.
Just put up some nice wallpaper, give him a nice view.
That is literally an option. Yeah, you can put a window in and stuff, and you can like give him a bookcase and stuff. But
Bookcase.
But you have to kill the guy.
Yeah.
Like you have to kill the guy. That's the thing. And there's another bit later on where there is a riot, and you send in riot police to help suppress it, which is not nice, but you're like, yeah, this is what happens, that's fine. And then basically the mayor is pressuring you for results, and at the point the mayor says, oh, actually, don't worry, I'm authorizing armed police to help you retake the facility. And these guys come in, and you get to control them. You can deploy them how you want, but you kind of have to deploy them, because otherwise, like, you kind of get to this point where, at least when I played through that level, it's not easy to reclaim the facility without deploying them. And so you're putting these guys in, and they're just shooting prisoners in the head. Just shooting these rioting prisoners. And that's, it's kind of disturbing. And so it's a game that actually makes you think about you genuinely think about your feelings on these issues, but through gameplay mechanics. And there is narrative elements to it as well. But it is mostly through gameplay.
They've added something very recently. I think
there's women now.
Yeah, there's women, but also babies.
Yeah, so you might have to build a creche, I think. So because I'm sure that was in the email I read. And that's again is just very interesting.
Yeah, it's another
and not
quite
something
dark
you think
topic.
about. But yeah, it's not something you think about, right?
Not really, no.
No, you don't think about prisoners and how they might need childcare facilities. And it's by introducing these gameplay mechanics, it actually makes you think about these deeply uncomfortable topics. And not a lot of games do stuff that way. There are certainly games that make you think about things, and that's fine. But there's quite often what I've seen described as ludonarrative dissonance, where the gameplay mechanics and the story aren't necessarily informing each other, and that's very much the case here. It's powerful to show you something. It is a hell of a lot more powerful to say the win state for this is you doing the thing you don't necessarily want to do. Like, the win state for this is you executing the guy. That makes you, even though it's a virtual guy, you're given his backstory and you're given the reason he's being executed. So you can actually judge for yourself whether you think he really deserves it. And the game even makes a point that because this is set in America, if he'd committed the crime he commits 100 miles away, he'd be in a different state and he wouldn't be getting the death penalty. And it makes these points to you. But you still have to go and do it. There's no option not to kill the guy. And that's, I think that's fascinating. That's just really
really using the gameplay mechanics to inform your perceptions of the game and to try and not even necessarily spread a message, because it doesn't tell you what they think the right choice is. I don't think it ever really goes, we think this.
I think it's a clever way of getting around the problem of like having morality, like choices and like cause and effect in the game.
Yeah,
because when you do have these choices, they're always like, even if it's a very difficult thing to choose between, like like, you know, are you going to give bread to one family or another?
Yeah.
In an RPG or something like this, there's always feels like something where you can pick which is the right thing in your opinion.
Yeah. And
here, I think it's clever that you might think that these things are wrong, but you have to go through with them anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's not a morality system in the game.
No.
But it's questioning your own personal morals.
So one of the interesting things is when you get into the kind of full game away from the campaign stuff, there is not quite a morality system, but there are very much consequences to your actions. So, but again, it never tells you that the consequences are bad. It's just there are consequences. So if you run like a more hard-nosed prison, perhaps with sterner punishments, etc., like you're going to get different outcomes to if you run a nice, almost like open prison with lots of education programs, and you're going to get different recidivism rates, and you've got different chances of a riot occurring and stuff like that. And again, it doesn't tell you that a riot occurring is bad. It's just, this is the consequence of the decisions you've made. And I feel that it's just very, very interesting that a game is doing this and is not, as you say, not imposing a morality on you, not imposing what their morality is on you. Just, this is the reaction to what you've done. Like, this is what happened because you did that thing. So even when you have choices, and even when they play into a quasi-morality system, it's not like it is in other games where it's black and white. In like Sunset, where the good choice is blue, and the choice that is, I think the blue choice is like just do your job and be cold, kind of, and the orange choice is kind of express more of your personality and become closer to this other person. And that's such a binary, obvious system, which is fine. It just gives you a different outcome, and the game plays differently. But here, like, it is such a definitive. It's such a non-definitive thing. It's so you did a thing, and maybe like in game time, 2 months away, there's a consequence for what you did.
Yeah.
But like maybe there's now overcrowding because you didn't build that cell block very well, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, that's fascinating to me. I think that's why more people should like try that game. It's out properly. It came out of early access this year.
Yeah, because it's been around for a long time.
It's been around for quite a while, 3 years, I think they said.
Yeah.
And you can go and play it, and it's got the new update that's got women in it now.
And babies.
So yeah, you can go and try that. I don't know if you can do mixed population prisons or not.
Probably not. I don't think you can do that in real life.
Yeah, so it's probably a men's prison or a women's prison, so you might have to start over.
Well,
again.
you might be able to have within a prison complex. You could have a wing for.
I guess so.
women
Yeah,
prisoners,
that's probably
that
true.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
But I would advise people go play it. People who are interested in sim management games definitely go play it, because it's a very good sim management game. But yeah, people who are interested in games that are trying to tell you something, I guess. But like we say, tell you something in an interesting way. It's worth playing. It's very worth playing for that.
Cool. And yeah, do you want to do the outro, or should I do the outro?
Oh, I'll do the outro. This is the last one. It's the last time I have to do this for last
attempt. And like, we get to go out with such a downer note as well. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. It's all about people dying. So if you want to get me on Twitter, you can get me on Twitter as HalPro. It's HALB Pro. You can get Teflon as Teflon. But this is the last in our year recording to series. I hope you have liked each and every one of them, all the way through from Rushy at the beginning to it was Mike Biffle before this one. He's a nice chap, very interesting to talk to. I hope you've liked them all. This is quite a long one actually for the last one, but that's going to do it for this year. So I guess say goodbye.
Goodbye.
The Sixth Axis podcast.